Namaskar. Today I am going to give a lecture on the topic of Malviya's place in modern Indian history. This is a very important lecture by me. In the history of modern India, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya's role and contribution have received less attention than they deserve. His stint of more than 50 years as an important member and leader of Indian National Congress, its president in 1909 and 1918, beside getting the unique honor of presiding over the two band sessions of the party in 1932 and 1933. The founding of Indian National Party and the Independent Congress Party in 1926 and of the Congress Nationalist Party in the 1935, President and leader of Hindu Mahasabha in the formative years, leader of Hindi Sahitya Sammelan and the Sanatan Dharma organizations and various other bodies ought to have earned him a more distinctive place in our narrative than what has been attributed so far. He was distinguished member of UP Legislative Council 1902 to 1913 and later of the Imperial Legislature Council and Central Assembly 1910 to 1930 for over the quarter of the century, raising noteworthy issues concerning India and its people. He founded, edited, nurtured, and supervised several newspapers in Hindi and English, turning them into the significant voices of Indian nationalism. And though the Hindu University is among his shelter contribution to the Indian national life, and role is either confined to founding and nurturing of this university, or the alternatively he gets paid as a Hindu conservative and revivalist and communalist, though the prominent moderate Malvizi hardly figure in discussion on the debate between moderates and extremists. An important leader of the anti-Indi nature movement, he find less of a mention while discussing the response of the Indian national leadership to the plight of the indentured labor. In many significant works of history and politics dealing with the growth of nationalism and communalism, he is either shown as creating right-wing pressures within the Congress, or his role is reduced to being a Hindu revivalist within the party. In the several other instances, when the social scientists sit down to the list notable icon of our past, or in major writings of modern Indian history, Malvi find little mention. Thus, in this symptomatic of a larger trend, it is often forgotten that there was a wide spectrum of leadership within the Hindu Mahasabha and the leaders such as Malviya's and Lajpat Rais were eager to bring unity among different communities while not forgetting the need for the Hindu unity. As President of Congress in 1918 and as well known Indian leader in the Imperial Legislature Council, Malvi's deliberation on important legislations such as the Montague reforms, Roll Act bills, and the Indemnity Bill are less known. He is instrumental in the setting up the Congress subcommittee for inquiring into Punjab wrongs in 1919. In 1923, appearing in Allahabad High Court after more than decades of having relinquished the bar, he was able to secure the death sentences reversed in the Chauri Chaura case in more than 150 cases. He also sought commutation of the sentences award to Bhagat Singh, Rajguru and Sukhdev on 14 February 1931. He wrote to the Viceroy pleading with him to exercise his prerogative of mercy, arguing that the action of this revolutionary was not prompted by any personal or selfish consideration, rather by the patriotic impulses. Their exclusion, Malvi's emphasized, would give a great shock to the public feeling in the country. In the Karachi Congress session on 31st March 1931, while seconding the resolution related to the Bhagat Singh and other revolutionaries, Malviya underlined that it was not selfishness, but a desire of real independence, and that guided Bhagat Singh and his friend to his path. From 1886 to 1937, Malvi's Pandit Madan Mohan Malvi was a regular in the conferences and development in the Indian National Congress, and subsequently, even when his health started failing, he continued to express opinion on critical issues facing the nation. He was thus longest serving member and leader of the Grand Old Party during the colonial period, an unflinching supporter and leader of the anti-British movement, participating in the Simon boycott and the civil disobedience. He also took part in the second round table conference in 1931 along with the Gandhi, and was instrumental in bringing about the Pune Pact. He made remarkable effort at the time with Gandhi and the another all by himself in bringing back the so-called untouchables to the Hindu fold and pleading for equal rights to them. Political leader of all youths looked up to him for guidance and inspiration. His vast political and legislature experience owned him followers, and he in turn mentored them. What did Malviya's Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya stand for? What did Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya stand for? Calling Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya great public character. Pattabi Sitaramaiah emphasized that starting from the day and Pandit Madan Mohan Malvi made his modern speeches at Calcutta Congress in 1886. He continued his unbroken zeal and unbating passion to serve the national institution. At the time as a humble worker and another a leader, a whole hogger, and yet another a part protester, and as a true satyagrahi and civil register in British jails. When the non-cooperation movement was inaugurated, he kept himself aloof from it, but never from the Congress. Moderates had manned the Congress in their day and abandoned it. Mr. Annie Besant captured it and surrendered it, but through the storm and sunshine, through good report and evil, Pandit Madan Mohan Malvi has stuck to it. Pandit Madan Mohan Malvi is one man who has had the courage to be alone in what considered to be the right. At one time, he was on the arst of the wave of popularity. At another, he was listened to with indifferences in the Congress platform. He never yielded to the current forces either by sheer inertia or by fear of popular reprobations. His magnum opus in the Banaras Hindu University, but he is an institution by himself. He epitomized India in all her achievement and reverses in all her hopes and delusions and disillusionments. Sachidanand Sinha had heard him speak for the first time at Allahabad Congress in December 1888. Sinha, who was then still a student at Patna College, recalled as Malviya's speeches combined rare eloquence with remarkable sweetness and suavity. Pandit Madan Mohan Malvi is unique in the sense of being the only public speaker who tries to persuade the audience not by reason of power and vehemence of his language, but by the great tact, wonderful gentleness, and extraordinary charm, coupled with the most easy, flowing fluency within all combined, produce upon the hearer mind and attention a shooting sense, and one carry conviction to it. Proposing the name of the Congress president in December 1909, Surendranath Banerjee referred to him as a silver-tongued orator of Congress. Acharya Kripalani, who had been Malviya's private secretary when he took over the Congress president in 1918, and that Malviya never opposed Gandhi's movement. His outlook was liberal and more inclined toward Gokhale school of thought. Yet he was too good a patriot to oppose the movement of non-cooperation. Gandhi considered Malvi a great patriot and who had served the country better than anybody. Addressing BHU students in November 1920, he remarked to doubt the university in Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya's very life. But it seems to me truer and India in his life, he is an optimist. Writing in 1931, Gandhi called himself a worshipper of Malviyaji. Today, who can rival Malviyaji's patriotism? From his youth till today, the spirit of his patriotism was flowed unabated. Speaking on the occasion of Silver Jubilee convocation of BHU 1942, Gandhi referred to Malviya's simple lifestyle and noble thinking and advised students to emulate him. Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya, traditional upbringing, his strong grounding in Sanskrit, in deep sense of reverence of the Shruti Smriti Puranic texts, and for the great Hindu epics, naturally turned him into the Sanatani. The socio-religious and political space of the late 19th century, Allahabad, in which Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya had grown up, was one of the intense metamorphoses, and so were Calcutta and Banaras, which is frequented. While the Brahma Samaj movement and the matured and spread its wing to many parts of north and eastern India, the Arya Samaj and grew later during the 1880s and 1890s, spreading to the Punjab and populous regions of the Hindi heartland, clearly adopted an anti-Brahma posture. Being strongly critical of the missionary influence on the Hindu society, the Arya Samajis advocated a return to the age of the Vedas and also criticized the ritual-ridden private as well as public space and attacked caste system and its hierarchy. Between these two extremes rose and Sanatanist movement. Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya's activity in the public sphere and started at an early age when, as a student of Mayor Central School College, Allahabad, he developed keen interest in Madhya Hindu Samaj, founded in 1880 by Pandit Aditya Ramji Bhattacharya, professor of Sanskrit at this same college. Bhattacharya, revered by Malviyaji as his guru, left a strong and lasting influence as a teacher and mentor. The organization soon emerged as a hub of public and political activity in the city, pursuing the objective of creating a bond among the Hindu different castes, promoting the education in the Indian languages, reforming social abuses, and presenting the desire and aspirations of the Hindu to the government. Bhattacharya was keen to chart middle courses at the time when different Hindu uniform societies were preaching only certain part of the Hindu tenets while abhorring others. Malviyaji, as a devoted discipline, followed the same path. Padmakant Malvi underlined Malviya's pioneering effort to the united diverse forces in the midst of multiple Hindu reform movements. Prarthana Samaj, Brahma Samaj, and Arya Samaj, and so many Samaj, where there is order to protest India culture against the Western onslaught. But they could not take the entire Hindu community along with themselves. It was given to Pandit Malviya to combine all these forces on one single platform and preserve the old tradition. But he also was well aware that if we cut ourselves of completely from modern new India and technical progress and was being made in the West, then just like a old pundits, we would not be able to preserve the culture and it would not be in the interest of the country either. Therefore, Malviya's greatest contribution has been synthesis of old tradition with modern knowledge, the scientific knowledge, technology, and all that West and thought as the as thought and as the teachers. In the Sanatanist endeavor, his association with Deen Dayal Sharma, the great Sanatanist scholar and reformer, whom he had met Calcutta during the Congress session in 1886, proved crucial. Their close camaraderie lasted their lifetime, and aided by the patronage of the Maharaja of Darbhanga. This triumvirate proved crucial in pursuing Sanatanist movement and the cause. Tough, though not as well as neat as the well organized and the Brahmos or the Aryas, the Sanatanist argues in the favor of the greater Hindu tradition following from the Vedas and then developing further through the Shastric Puranic tradition. Impressed with the pan-American Indian character of the Congress, congregations in Calcutta, Deen Dayal felt the need for similar all India body for preserving Indian culture, and very soon Deen Dayal and Malvi started discussing plans for setting up an all India organization of the Sanatan Dharma. According to the meeting of Sanatanists was organized as Haridwar on 17 April 1887, which decided to hold a conference for the setting of the All India body. Consequently, a major conference was organized in the same city on the 29th May to 31 May 1887, in which it was decided to preach Sanatan Dharma based on the Puranas and appointed preachers of the proposed purpose, spread the teaching of Sanskrit, promote Hindi, attempt to make in a language in court, and also try to make it medium of instructions in schools, bring together and unity different sects like Saivism, Vaishnavism, etc., considering their core in the same. This All India organization was named Sanatan Dharma Mahamandal. Malviya was appointed the Mahapadeshak in the great preceptor. The Mahamandal is steered by the Deen Dayal made slow but steady progress, holding conferences, helping fund school and colleges, and propagating the term of Sanatanism. This effort culminated in the holding of great grand conference of the Mahamandal in Delhi on 8 to 12 August 1900, attended also by the Maharaja of Darbhanga and Malvi. Among the subject listed by deliberations at the conference were religious education in the official curriculum, women education, establishing Sanskrit college, use Devanagari Prachar and its inclusion in the court, setting up the office of Mahamandal. The Mahamandal merged with the Nigamagam Mandali of Haridwar, led by Swami Gyananand in 1901. However, very soon, Deen Dayalu got disenchanted with Gyananand's style of functioning and left the organization in March 1902. The Mahamandal was officially registered in 1902 and a board of directors was appointed in 1903. It opened the branch in Banaras. Gradually, Banaras became the base of the organization. In view of this breach of Mahamandal, Malviya founded another Sanatanist organization called Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, in whose inaugural conventions of Allahabad in early 1906, he got the scheme of Hindu University passed, defining the essence of Dharma. Sanatanists sought to combine value inherent Dharma with the substance of the society, in reason that though there had been many ups and downs ever since civilized societies came into existence, the moving spirit of Sanatan Dharma and remained intact. Pandit Madan Mohan Malvi emphasized that though through life is commonly seen most precious, Aryas had been advised that the Dharma should not be ignored even the cost of life. He lamented that during the modern times, the faith of Aryas in Dharma was on the decline. Dharma, which was seen in priceless, which was considered an everything to man, which was seen more precious than life itself, which was seen the moving force into the society and its advancement. In the eye of innumerable progenies, alas, today the same Dharma is seen in insignificant, responsible for the destructions of the society and for our dead decline. Many of our English educated brothers claim that it is the Dharma which has ruined us. He emphasized that Dharma itself has such a wider and deeper meaning that is impinged on the larger moral order. Therefore, of any human being was following his true Dharma, then that would never be in the cause of mutual animosity. Rather its absence would be. If because of difference of faith, Hindu, Aryas, Musalmans and Christians fight among themselves, can it be called Dharma? Hindu are ideal worshippers and Aryas were not. But because of this, if there is a constant tension between the two, can it be dharma? Hindu and Musliman follows different beliefs, but because of this, it's some Musliman in always against Hindus. Then, are they truly faithful their own dharma? Never. If they do so, then Hindu and Aryas were straying from the path of Ved, Christian from the path of Bible, and Muslims from the path of Quran Sharif. The Hindu Dharmopadesh, which Malvi wrote, highlight the essential feature of Hinduism. He discussed the Sanatanists, Aryas, Brahmos, Sikhs, Buddhists were subsection of Hindu and appealed to them to cooperate with other patriotic co-religionists. All Hindus, including Sanatanists, Arya Samajis, Brahma Samajis, Sikhs, Jain and Buddhists etc., while following their own belief, should strive to show love and respect to each other. They should also work along with those Parsis, Muslims, Christians and Jews who are devoted to the country's development and are patriots. The most significant issue are the fallout which concerned Malviji was that proper dimensions of dharma amongst all our younger brothers in such a way that they would not be influenced by the preaching of followers and other religions. He came down heavily on those leaders who claiming to be the custodians of education and who is spite of being in the company of those missionaries who were passionate about Christianity, were ignorant or negligent about their own religion. He asked, if missionaries would be organized reliefs for the orphans or drought victim, then why should not be Hindus?